comfortable table.
Yeah, it's very comfortable. Good morning, everyone. So, Joe,
hello. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good.
So last time we met was at South by, and if I remember correctly, the Ether and Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrencies were really at a high peak. Since then, the market has lost billions and billions. And can you explain to us what is going on, actually?
Well, the price went down.
The price went down? Why did it go down?
So why does it go up is actually the question. I think the market goes up because the technology is really quite profound, and people understand that we'll be able to build things with it as it matures that will radically transform society for the positive. And so human beings tend to jump into situations like that, like in the dot-com era in the late 90s, because they want to be part of it, because they think it's going to be societally transformative, and because they want to make money. And in this particular case, actually many times since the advent of Bitcoin in 2009, 5 or 6 times, we've seen remarkable surges of excitement, irrational exuberance, and those things, those moments tend to overshoot what the actual fair price might be for these tokens. And essentially, because the technology is so immature, a lot of the value in the ecosystem is speculative value, and so people drive up price. And then because a lot of it's speculative value, there isn't that much fundamental need for certain tokens. There's probably less fundamental need for Bitcoin than for Ether, because you need Ether to run applications on the platform.
But what you're saying is that we will see again a peak like we saw in January?
So yeah, we'll see peaks and we'll see corrections. We've seen so far each peak and each correction is much, much bigger than the one previously. So if you look back on the chart to the previous one, it looks like a tiny little pimple on the chart. And we definitely had a very serious correction, which makes a lot of sense because it's very early days, and the platforms are used for some interesting things, but they're not fundamentally, systemically important to our society right now. And so we're going to see it go up and down. And
if cryptocurrencies is not the thing, so what would be really a game changer for our society on a platform like
So I didn't say
blockchain?
that. I do think cryptocurrencies are going to be interesting and important for our society going forward, but cryptocurrencies are just a very narrow slice of what blockchain can do, and they're also a very narrow slice of the space of crypto tokens or crypto assets. So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. It was the first. There are a few other cryptocurrencies where their use case is just payments or store of value or something like that. And we're seeing some cryptocurrencies that are tracking the price of the US dollar now, so Paxos and the Gemini coin and Maker DAI. So there are lots of really good systems coming along. These are fundamental components that we're going to need to build infrastructure. But that's just the payment function. There's a crypto fuel called Ether, which powers applications on the Ethereum platform. It's one crypto commodity. There are other crypto commodities to pay for decentralized storage, to pay for decentralized bandwidth, to pay for decentralized compute. Golem, iExec, Sonam are 3 platforms that are live on Ethereum right now, and you have to pay their token in order to run those machines, basically. Cryptocurrencies will take their very narrow slice of the coming crypto asset revolution.
And one of the big promises of the blockchain is that it is going to upend the internet as we know it now, or it's going to fix it. So, for example, if we think of Facebook, which is a big platform, if I would start Facebook from scratch on the blockchain, what would be different for us, for the users, and why would that be better?
Yeah, so the thesis, or one thesis, is that the internet is somewhat broken right now. Has taken the internet and the web technologies have taken us very far in terms of transforming society over the last couple decades, roughly. But the technology is missing natively digital assets or digitally scarce assets, and it's missing an identity construct. And so that's most important. Because we're missing a healthy identity construct on the web, different companies have defined identity to serve their business models. So I'm comfortable spraying aspects of my identity, or I used to be comfortable spraying aspects of my identity throughout the internet so that I could access different free services. And that information gets stored and monetized and sometimes not adequately secured by different corporations. And so the foundation of the internet and the web is insufficient to enable these kinds of companies to operate business models that are not exploitative, not ethical at this point. And so we're moving into a world where corporations are understanding us so well that they can source information on us to increase the value of our information and the value of our attention, where we're the product on their platform. They understand us so well that they can addict us to these platforms and sell us for a high price and sell us for many hours a day or more than they normally.
From a user's perspective, what would be different if Facebook was redesigned on the blockchain?
So identity would be different. So there's an organization called the Decentralized Identity Foundation. There's a specification called DID, Decentralized ID. Our Uport project is implementing an outstanding version of that. It's the only one on Ethereum, but there are other entities like Microsoft, IBM, Blockstack, a handful of others that came together to form this spec. And it's a way for us to create the root of our identity on a public blockchain, something that we fully control from our side of the browser. And then Uport and others are putting together personal data lockers associated with the root of our identity so that we can encrypt our personal information and when we wish to, selectively disclose it in situations that we designate. So if we want to monetize our information, we'll be able to do that. Be able to do that in data markets or attention markets. If we want to de-identify that information and share it in a research study, we'll be able to do that. So I'm not saying the Facebooks and Googles of the world won't be able to continue to pursue their business model, but they'll be doing it probably with lower quality data, the stuff that I'm willing to spray across the internet in order to access their services, but higher quality information, health information, financial information, I'm going to stay in control of that. And if I want to interact with somebody to give them more meta information on who I am for their purposes, if I want to share that information with a research study, I can put that on a data market and make it accessible to a study or to Google and Facebook if they want to pay me for it.
And so in the end, it's me who decides when I want to expose this data.
So agency is the idea.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So if agency is the idea, what is the blockchain? Is it a business or is it a belief?
Is the blockchain a business? So one can build businesses on the blockchain, and essentially the corporation construct is something that I can put money into, and it can use that money to figure out how to provide value to its customers. And in exchange for putting money into that thing, I can expect a return on my investment generated by these people in the company. About 3 months ago, Bill Hinman, Director of Corporate Finance at the SEC, said in a speech where he declared Ether decentralized, he said that the SEC understands that there is this new kind of construct, essentially a networked business model that's not a corporation, that doesn't require investment in the traditional sense. People can buy a token representing consumer utility value, sort of a business logic for operating this network business model or a protocol-based open platform. And if people construct that token if it's constructed in an appropriate way, so that there aren't dividends and things like that, that doesn't make it look like a security or an investor token. And if it's marketed properly, so it's not marketed in huge quantities to speculator types, if it's marketed to people who pledge to use it or are forced to use it in some way before even being able to trade it, then they would consider that a consumer utility token, not a security, and that would be sort of the business logic glue that creates this new construct.
Okay, so with ConsenSys, you are advising companies, right, and also governments, which is the most sought after token or application that entities are now looking for? Because it seems a bit like, except of cryptocurrencies, there hasn't been like this killer application on the blockchain that everyone would like to use. Yeah,
so ConsenSys, we're about 3 3/4 years old, and we do lots of different things. So we do advise companies, and we build software for companies and consortia and banks and central banks and governments. We also build lots of product for the Ethereum ecosystem and lots of those network business models. We do education, we do capital markets activities also. So on the consulting side, there are many different projects that are being built out. I sort of see the blockchain space as two-pronged right now. It's working with existing organizations, governments or corporations or consortia, to enable them to work better, more efficiently, share information, work collaboratively. Can you tell us
a concrete example? What kind of an application that could be?
Comgo, a trade finance platform for the commodities space. So we're working with a bunch of big companies, commodity trade finance banks and commodity houses to enable more efficient KYC and more efficient post-trade finance processing. So it's a whole supply chain, and it sort of eliminates all the paperwork. It eliminates a lot of the friction.
And after cryptocurrencies, what would you think, or what could be this killer app that really helps the blockchain to transform to mass market?
Yeah, to finish answering your question, there are thousands of projects around the world that are building the foundations of Web 3.0, the sort of next iteration beyond Web 2. And Web 3.0 will involve things like fungible tokens. And so you can have cryptocurrencies or different kinds of crypto commodities, crypto bonds, et cetera. There are a few banks, Daimler-Benz and others have already put bonds on the blockchain, on Ethereum. So there's fungible or non-fungible tokens. You've heard of CryptoKitties. There are a whole bunch of collector crypto tokens coming out. Major League Baseball is doing that right now, so that's an interesting, popular application in the US. So there are atomic swap systems, decentralized exchanges, just the fundamental infrastructure, naming services, dynamic workforce creation. So there's a project called bounties.network and Gitcoin that does the same thing for open source. So it's a mechanism for putting bounties on Ethereum and enabling people to come along and sort of demonstrate that they've done the work, prove that they deserve the bounty and get paid out. So that'll happen automatically soon. Ujo Music is a platform where I think it's around 800 artists right now. It's still in beta, but artists are able to establish their presence on the platform in a creators portal. And it's mostly focused on artists right now. We haven't focused too much on the consumer yet, but it's still fairly easy to use. And artists can establish their identity and upload content and get paid directly for that content. So one of the beauties of blockchain is that you can have content creators and resource providers and service providers access their consumer directly without a big set of music companies in the middle or big intermediaries in the financial space or ride-sharing space sucking up most of the value.
It sounds very logical, but it seems like the technology is not there yet.
The technology is very much there yet for these early phases of the evolution. Yeah, so lots of people are using it, but you know, just like with the web, all of society didn't pile into it instantly. It needed to deal with scalability issues and privacy issues and a whole bunch before my mother even was able to get on and use email, and that was just the early days.
So where would you say, on a scale, where are we right now with the blockchain?
Near the start.
Near the start?
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
That's very reassuring, because I'm a journalist, right? So yes, I tried to buy some Civil tokens. Yep. Civil is this new journalism platform, yep. And I gave up because it's so complicated. You get to create like 3, 4, 5 different accounts. Yep. You need your passport, you need your driver's license, you need dollars, you need ethers, yep. You need whatever. So I stopped.
We're working through all those issues. So the issue there is that we're working with regulators around the world. We're trying to be extremely rigorous in how we sell these tokens so that they're considered consumer utility tokens and not securities. And so we're going, I think, way overboard. I think we'll relax over time and make it easier to buy a consumer utility token. So as a journalist, why were you attracted to Civil? Because we think it's one of the most important projects out there.
Because, of course, I'm interested in experimenting with new ways to build trust and also to make journalism more sustainable.
Yeah.
So maybe I didn't really get to the point where I could understand the business model for journalism. Maybe you can explain it.
Sure, yeah. So it's Civil is a platform for sustainable and ethical journalism. Sustainable in the sense that the journalism industry's been decimated over the last couple of decades with consolidation with private equity firms and hedge funds. Buying up all the properties and gutting them and turning them into these channels for roughly the same information, none of which is local information that people need in order to understand their social context, and a lot of it's obviously not real news. And so building sustainable business models is important, but ethics is perhaps even more important. And so there's a constitution and a foundation with sort of layers of academics and journalism professionals that can serve as an appeals committee. But you, as a professional journalist, and I think there are about 30 newsrooms on the platform right now. As a professional journalist, you can get together and you can stake your newsroom on the platform. So you put a security bond up on the platform so that you can get on this list of ethical newsrooms. And if you're seen to be operating unethically, then somebody can come along and post another stake and challenge your behavior. And it's a pretty well thought out system. They're appeal mechanisms. So it's a technology called a token curated registry. It's designed to enable people who are holding the token to curate a high quality list that newsrooms want to get on and consumers want to check out. And so that platform will have a whole bunch of other services that involve that token, but that's the first business model for the platform. And all these different platforms can have their own business models. So there's Ethereum is a place where lots of standards are getting built for different kinds of tokens and atomic swap mechanisms. There's one for subscriptions that we and others have done a lot of work on, and so we're going to be building a software platform based on a very popular piece of software that enables lots of different pieces of Ethereum to be in it, and so that will include elements that enable you to work well.
Which popular piece of software?
Sorry?
Which popular piece of software is that?
Yes, a popular piece of software.
Okay, I see.
I can't talk about it right now.
All right. Listening to you and listening to a lot of people who are in this blockchain sphere, sometimes to me it seems like of course it is a business, but it's only about to take off. But at the same time, it seems to be a belief, right, in a new system that is going to help us. Tell us a little bit more about that. How did you jump into this business? You used to work as a music manager in Jamaica, right? So what really made you start doing something with the blockchain?
So it's definitely a philosophical movement. I hate to call it a movement. I think of it more as a phenomenon, that when you wrap a planet in layers and layers of instantaneous communication mechanisms, and you develop a technology that enables different actors with different agendas to come into sync, to come to a decision. In Bitcoin every 10 minutes, in Ethereum every 15 seconds, and soon 5 seconds. Even if half of the actors on that platform are malicious, you have a mechanism, a different organizing principle for society. And so I think it is a movement in the sense that lots of people are excited about this and pushing this forward, but I think it's hopefully a natural evolution in how societies can organize themselves. I think it's a better way than the more rigid top-down command and control hierarchies that we're used to. And those are good when communication is slow and expensive and decision-making is difficult. We have seen just enormous excitement. You can set up a Python or an AI meetup, and you get a smattering of people. If you do a blockchain meetup, you get 5 or sometimes 10 times more people, because it does represent potentially positive transformation of society. And I think lots of people feel like we could use a change in how politics are running.
That is definitely the case, and
Sure.
all this enthusiasm, it also reminds me of the beginning of the internet, when everyone was saying this is going to help
Sure.
spur democracy, unheard voices will get a stage, but then in the end it turned out completely different. So
yeah, so there's always a back and forth. There's always an attempt to make things fairer, an attempt to capture value in the new regime. I think this one, I won't say this one's going to be different, but I think this one has tools to make it more likely that it will have staying power. So the internet and that whole era developed technologies that enabled people to, who are in control of those technologies, to pile wealth on higher than ever before. So they were centralizing technologies. They made use of traditional financial markets. This technology, I believe, will enable more people to have more agency, more direct financial participation, less power for intermediaries to perform rent-seeking behavior. So these network business models, I think of them as global topical villages. You can stand up one of these things to support your favorite band, or you can stand up one of those things to do research in a disease that you're impacted by. So these mechanisms involve you interacting directly with your ID, reputation systems, token systems, so you can gather people from around the world using these communication networks. You can define a set of goals. You can raise funds to achieve those goals, and you can use decentralized governance mechanisms to take you on your way and achieve those goals. So with that sort of construct, that's less about profit making and more about active participation, direct agency, I think we'll be able to accomplish more of the things that we want to do collectively without relying on governments or corporations to take care of those things for us.
Taking it on a philosophical level, maybe, or a law level, the Harvard professor Lessing, he said that code is law, right? So, and one key element in the blockchain are the smart contracts, and the smart contracts, or in the old days, in the analog days, when someone wrote a law, there was lots of room for interpretation. That's why you go to court and you pay your lawyer, because you are hoping that he will get the interpretation that's in your favor. But with encoded law, like in a smart contract, everything is set. So if you do this and that, then this and this will happen. You will get your money, or the contract will be validated. And some people are even arguing that this will, in a way, limit human behavior. If one day, let's say, the blockchain is going to be the big platform and the technology of the future, everything we do will be encoded in these smart contracts. So, in fact, we will be more like less free than we are today.
Ooh, that's scary.
Isn't it?
So, do you believe that humans in society will allow that to happen?
Humans in society allowed Facebook and manipulations happen.
But there's a big backlash against that right now.
It is a backlash, but we still don't know where it's going to take us.
True. Blockchain is a technology. It was created by people. It will be implemented by people in societies, and it's going to be a long discussion, years or decades, and I think we're going to build layers that we think are good, and we'll build other layers on top of that. We have a technology, so I do believe not that strictly that code is law, but that code can help with agreements and laws and treaties. So we're coming from a space where we have essentially top-down command and control, hierarchical systems, and somebody at the top with some minions make the rules for society. Maybe it's a monarch, maybe it's an elected official. Sometimes they look very similar. Sometimes those rules that run society are well implemented. Sometimes they're not well implemented. Sometimes there is no rule of law. Sometimes it's very capricious. And so with this technology, we have the opportunity to move from subjective trust to automated trust and guaranteed execution of certain things. So it can be certain laws. In the case of securities laws, you can build regulation and compliance into smart contract. With respect to contractual agreements, you can use blockchain technology to guarantee that the terms are executed. Treaties between countries could potentially be done in this technology. Treaties are often difficult to enforce. Sometimes you have to go to war, but if you put security bonds in these smart contracts, there could be less interest in breaking treaties and immediate punishment. We have a technology called open law, which is essentially a platform for blockchain-based legally enforceable agreements, and we're starting to use it in our company, and other companies like Rocket Lawyer are starting to use it, and our music platform is starting to use it. And it essentially enables you to upload a contract. It can be prose. It can have clauses that are programmatic, so that you can escrow money into this living agreement. You can send data into it. The programmatic aspect can execute when certain conditions are met. So these kinds of technologies, and you can either make it fully transparent by putting it all on the blockchain, or you can create a digital digest and sign that and keep it secret, but it's still enforceable. So these kinds of technologies will enable us to interact with one another with much greater trust, execution of the agreements, even if we don't know each other, even if we compete with one another or don't trust each other for other reasons.
So you just said that we are at the starting point. What do you think, how many years will it take until we are there, until the blockchain is going to be the mass technology that will replace the internet as we know it?
I don't know the future.
You don't know the future?
I don't, sorry.
That's a very good closing remark, I think. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.